What's going on, everyone? Thomas Jordan here for another episode. Today, we are joined by cinematographer, content creator, and what I would deem the Lord of Sarcasm, all the way from London, England. Ryan Say, what's going on, buddy?
Oh yeah, everything's great. That's a, I just thought I'd get that sarcasm out of the way, and just yeah, no, sorry, everything's great. It is really, it's great. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you as well, man. Well, for the people who don't know who you are and what you do, what who are you and what do you do?
That's such an interesting question because I'm sort of transitioning at the moment with everything, but to summarize it, I'm basically a videographer. I think that's probably the best way to put it because well, I can do everything from editing, directing, cinematography to a certain extent, audio, and then I do a lot of corporate work for companies, promote promo videos, internal videos, that kind of stuff, and then I obviously do a lot for online entrepreneurs. Well, like the likes of
Mhm.
James Wedmore and various others. I've done video series for those, and work on projects back to front. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything really in terms of video, but I'm trying now to hone that down to like really, what are you doing? Because it's so everyone can do video now, so it's really hard to differentiate.
And you mentioned transitioning. I know like your main work is with video directing and editing, kind of like what you said, but what are you transitioning to?
Well, what I'm trying to figure out at the moment is I'm loath to use the word, but niche or niche,
Hmm.
depending where you're coming from. So, yeah, it's just trying to hone down what you're selling essentially, really, because at the moment I can sort of do a bit of everything, and I think what I've found in the past is that actually confuses people because a lot of the time when you hear the word videographer, people automatically, and I've had this from clients, they think wedding videographer. That's from my experience what most people think when you say videographer, and that's not the case. It's like you're an editor, you do pre-production, post-production, you're running a crew at times, and then you're editing dealing with the client on the daily or throughout the whole project, and then you're also usually giving some kind of advice into, well, where the hell's that video going to go, what are you going to do with that video, what kind of things can you do with that video. And so that is kind of where I sit in terms of videography, which is like huge, and it's probably
Mm.
far too much work.
Yeah, people are like,
And
oh, so
it's
you
also
do,
yeah.
yeah, they're like, oh, so you do video, so that must mean you do photo as well. So when you're shooting the video, can you like take photos while you're shooting video, right? No extra
Oh well,
charge, right?
well, I mean, you can, but well, it depends what they want out of it, really.
Yeah.
And it's like trying to get be clear with it and exactly what a client wants, because some stuff you can actually just shoot with your iPhone, to be perfectly honest,
Hmm.
and other stuff is like it can take a month to do some of the projects I've done, maybe 2 months, because they're like 8 or 10 episodes worth of like quite business industry heavy content, which is like you have to work with different people to get all the scripting right, and but I ultimately I think directing is probably where I want to be.
I know your main, I guess, niche and everything is videography and trying to find your space in that niche. And you also dabbled into podcasting as well. And I'm curious to hear how that went and what your journey was like.
Well, it was an interesting one because basically, obviously, the pandemic happened, and I assume it was the same in the States where you guys are. That
Hmm.
it just got to a point. It was like, oh, you guys have all got to stay at home. That's it. There's no more going out, or it's very limited. And so, obviously, for me and my friend Dylan, who I did the podcast with, we literally had nothing better to do. So we decided, because we chat on the phone every day for about an hour, so we thought, well, why not just put it into podcast mode? And then we can do a video podcast because it seemed quite popular at the time, and we literally had nothing better to do. And so we thought it'd be good practice to do it. And also, we got given these MK4 digital mic. We also got given these MK4 digital microphones by Sennheiser, and we'd not used them yet on anything. So we thought, well, what we'll do is we'll just record into the computer because they're USB, they're not XLR. We'll just record into the computer, and we'll just do a podcast and see what happens. So we decided to do one every day. I think. And in the end, I think on the first season, if you want to call it that, we did like 65 episodes. I think it was 65 days straight.
Man.
It was something.
So what is as far as like production goes, because I don't think some people realize if if they're listening and they're wanting to start a podcast, I always push for video heavily just because you can chop it up into millions of pieces of content. People can get to know you. But as far as like the actual like you kind of talked about the equipment you used, but what about like the actual editing process? Because for people who haven't seen your podcast, I mean, it's two cinematographers talking or doing a video podcast, so it looked awesome.
Yeah, so okay, I'll give you a rundown of like like the equipment used and how we set it up. So basically, we both had a A7S III camera. We both had the Sennheiser MK4 digital. So what we did is, because what we wanted to do is, and if you see it, the Over and Out show on YouTube, you can go and check any of the 85 odd videos that are on there, and you'll see what we've done is we've split the screen. So we wanted it to look like we were in the same room together. So what we did is we were on the phone and we were literally adjusting tables and tripods like with a tape measure, and figuring out how because we were using the same lens as well. So we were figuring out how far away everything was and what angles it was, so we could have it look as similar as we could in each other's respective rooms. And then Dylan would then record his side, he would then send it to me, and then I would put it together. And because we wanted to keep it simple, we didn't edit anything. So it was like, boom, we start and then we just talk. And unless we said something that was really offensive and like questionable, we never cut anything. Which I don't think, I think that maybe happened like once. We thought, probably best that doesn't go on the internet. And yeah, which happens,
Yeah.
And so then it was literally a question of topping and tailing it and then just syncing them together. But where the real magic happens, and I this is what kind of confused everyone, but also kind of got everyone quite excited about it, was that I knew that Dylan was on my, I think he was basically sitting on my left. So I would be positioned always looking kind of to my left, and he would always be positioned kind of looking towards his right, to his right. So we would do stuff, and then because we don't really know what the other one's doing visually, we're kind of assuming we know, but we're also talking to them as if we were having a conversation. And there were a couple of episodes where we did something really like kind of stupid, like we both had the same thing, so we pass it through to the other side and then the other person would take it. So that got really difficult really quick, so we only did that a few times. But the magic of it was that it all looked kind of like it was in the same room, but it was more our interaction between each other that I think really got everyone, because we got lots of questions about how to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you trying to, well, how did that go? Well, hold on. First of all, would you say what you guys did was overkill for a video podcast?
Yeah, it's complete overkill. To be honest, the main reason we wanted to do it is because no one else could do it. And we've not seen anyone else do it to that level. Now, there are things that are coming out now, like I think it's Riverside or something.
Yeah, Riverside.fm.
You may have heard of it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I did a Zoom call with someone the other day, and that kind of lines you up already. So it's kind of taking away the pain that we had. Well, I say the pain, we did it for fun. There was no pain in it. So, but you're not going to get that kind of quality. So, and I actually know Riverside, I think it records your, like, on everyone's end. So, and then uploads it. So you get the best quality from each person. But again, unless you're using like a proper camera or a proper microphone, you're not going to get that. And then you also have to be aware of how you're interacting with the 2 or 3 other people or whoever's on the call. So, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, you can do it that way now, but we did it our way. So we were first, I guess.
Yeah. Is it kind of cool to know that nobody else was doing it like that, and that you guys are the only ones to actually be able to put that together?
I don't think we're the only ones to be able to do it. We might not even be the first people to do it. The internet's a big place, and we may
It is, but like you said,
so.
I follow a lot of podcasters too, and I didn't see anything else like that. And what people don't realize as well is like you're using professional cameras, professional lenses, professional lighting, and lighting is a whole skill in itself. As far as the editing process goes, how to say, like, some people just don't, I don't think people realize. That's why I asked you if it was overkill, because people who are just starting are like, what the hell are these people talking about?
No, it's so overkill. I mean, well, what's interesting about it is, and this is what kind of burns me about the internet, looking at all social media platforms, is the quality of footage like that doesn't actually mean anything, really, at the end of the day. Because if you've got a great podcast that, yeah, you're recording it through your iPhone, or you've just got really crappy equipment, but it works, and you're really engaging, and you have a great like timbre on your voice, and you just know how to tell a story, it doesn't really matter so much what you're using, because you get people that way. So it's always like, it depends where your talent lies. And I think for us, it was overkill. And for most people, you'd never do it. You don't need to do it, because if you're a good storyteller or whatever, or you have good content, you don't need to do it. And I just think it was a total overkill, and it's not necessary, really. It does look nice, but it's, like, and as I'm sure you're going to ask me about why did we stop and all that kind of stuff, or
we'll get there.
Reasons is that we'll get there in a minute.
Yeah. No, well, the reason also, because I just want to finish up with the gear stuff. Did it burn you out as a editor as well? Because this is another hurdle I think people don't understand as well, is when you're dealing with that type of footage, the file sizes are huge. Same with the audio. I'm sure they're WAV files, which are giant as well. And then just the render times and the export times must have been insane, unless you had a really powerful computer, which you need as well to be doing something like that.
Well, actually, it took us a few days probably to figure out what the best process was, because we were both shooting in 4K at the beginning, which was just like a ridiculous, which was just like
fill up those hard drives fast, man.
Oh man, I got about 500 gigs worth of our stuff, so it's nuts. So Dylan would then the internet where we are is pretty fast, so he'd export his, then, or he'd sync his audio and export it and then upload it for me, and then I would download it. But we realized after a while doing it 4K is just not sustainable. So what we were actually doing, we were actually giving way on a bit of quality, and we went down to 1080 just for purposes of speed, because it was just ridiculous. And then the export is the export. And what we do, and because remember, we're not editing, like there's very little to edit within the thing. It would be like intro, then we had this intro title card thing, then we just let it run, and then we just add the title card on the end. That's it. And then all we had to do is line it up. And one of the things we did have to do is we had to do a clap at the beginning of every or at the end of every episode, because we were recording through the computer and using that audio. There was no way to know where we started to line it up for the video. So at the end, Dylan would put his headphones over the mic, and I would clap, and then that's my sync point. So then that would sync everything backwards from the end of both our clips, because obviously I'd hear my clip, and then I'd hear my clip through his headphones through the microphone. If you know what I mean. It's so contrived, but that's what we did. And sometimes a battery would run out on his camera, and then we'd have to not restart, he'd go, oh, it's turned off, and then we'd have to kind of cut there, but then we'd lost the sync point. So then there's several episodes where everything's just slightly out because I couldn't quite get it right. Yeah. So it's like we're talking milliseconds. Yeah. But like Dylan would say something, and I just hold a little longer than I would normally. So it is what it is.
Did that ever?
It's a big edit process. But
I was gonna say, did you? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's a big editing process, but I think what you were trying to get to is that I know what I'm doing. Like I've been editing for uh, many years, 2009, 2010. And problem solving is what a lot of us do. That's how editing works. That's the main, I'd say, the main thing about editing is how do you fix this problem? How do you get around this? How do you make it work? Because we both edit and we both shoot, we were working together to try and get that process, you get the highest quality in the fastest amount of time. Because, well, after a while, we realized it's quite hard work doing it every day. And then as things started to open up and we started doing more stuff, doing the podcast again was difficult.
Yeah,
even for us pros.
And did you guys ever take turns editing and everything, or was that solely on you? And if it was on you, did you burn out at all on the post-production process?
No, basically Dylan did most of he did all the socially media types. Socially media, that's not even a thing. He did all the social media side and most of the promotion, and he did all the branding because he's like a graphic designer and does that kind of stuff. So that was his side of doing stuff, and he'd make little short clips of what I'd sent to make funny things for Instagram, and he would deal with all the YouTube stuff. Like I'd upload, and then he'd do all the descriptions and all that kind of thing. So it was like a split load. But I guess if I were to say, I guess I'm a faster, and I'm putting the bunny ears up here, better editor. But then he was doing all this other stuff, so it was just how it was split, really.
It's actually a perfect little partnership going on. If you're doing the editing and he's doing the social part, that way you really don't get burned out. But you guys did it. You said 86 episodes over the course of what? Almost a year, or just about a year total?
It must have been about a year, because we did season 1, 2, and 3. Because I think we had a break after about 65 episodes, and then went back in again for a little while, and then we stopped again, and then we did some more. But it wasn't the second season. 2 and 3 weren't as we weren't as prolific, let's say.
So I haven't coined the phrase yet, but the thing that keeps coming to my mind, and this is the problem that I see with a lot of podcasters, is the 1-year curve. And it happened to me too. It's like you get all your footing in, you get all your episodes done, but then you realize, like, man, I'm putting in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and there's not much return on investment, and a lot of people stop. And I basically paused for a little bit as well, and you guys paused for a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is that we did 65 episodes in a row, and it was born, you got to remember what ours was born out of, which is we had nothing else to do and we wanted to try something new, because I guess we used the pandemic as a good opportunity to do that. The thing that came back was that you're right, we just didn't get anywhere with it. Like, no one cared, and it's really hard to carry on doing stuff when no one cares. And I think we kind of reached our peak in terms of the ability of what we could do. So we'd got our process so far, like, well down. We'd got our interaction, like, incredibly well. All the branding was there. Everything was in place, and we were just, dare I say, waiting for for fame to just appear, like it does. And what we realized is that because me and him, we generally talk a lot of nonsense, and like, you pick any episode, it's about something completely nonsensical, and it's nothing like the episode before or after. And that we think was the issue, is that there was no real niche. So I think in season 2, or maybe even halfway through the first season, we tried to go, right, well, let's talk about video, but let's, like, add other stuff in it as well. And I think the trouble is that me and Dylan don't really like talking about video. Like, we're not video geeks. I use that term lightly, but we like talking about general crap, and dealing with clients and that kind of stuff. And we're pretty brutal, like, with each other and the way we talk about stuff. I mean, it's all in jest, but it's not for everyone, if you know what I mean. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very hard thing to sell, I think. And so even though we try to rein it back and cut some of the swearing, because we were given these microphones by Sennheiser and they weren't even sharing it. It was just like, why aren't you sharing it? And we never really found out. But like, so that's why we tried different stuff. And it just didn't really, like you said, the ROI on it wasn't there. And I think if we had been picked up and the numbers were growing, then I think we would certainly have carried it on. And we do talk about now about how we could bring it back in a way, maybe doing it once a week or once a month and that kind of thing. But we haven't really found a reason to do it, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
we've got other stuff going on.
No, it's interesting because I talk about this a lot too, is the power of why. When you're at just in a podcast interview asking people why, but like your why as well, like why are you doing this? And when I see people get into podcasting for like the money, I'm just like, ooh, it's gonna take a while, because you've got to develop those skills. But it's also really cool to hear your story on how it like evolved. Like it started as one thing, is like, oh, you guys are talking about phone calls or what you would talk about when you would talk to each other, and then it's like, okay, well, now we need to talk about video. It's like, well, we don't like to talk about video. Then it's client work. And it's kind of, if you follow James Wedmore at all, he has that the famous saying, which you start with is, or what does he say? What you start with is not with which you end with, or something like that. But that's why it takes like years, like with Joe Rogan. And I don't think a lot of people realize is he started his podcast at like 43 before podcasting was really podcasting. And he didn't land that huge multi-$100 million+ deal until like 10 years later. Like it takes a long time. So it's like, you've got to really love it and just go through like the ebbs and flows. And, especially for like businesses and stuff, I think it makes a lot of sense because like a lot of value content, as is really popular right now. And, you can either go the educational route, the motivational route, or the entertaining route, or try and do all three. Like you just got to keep testing and testing and testing. And that's what I see a lot of people do. And I'm just curious if you would be able to, do you think you will go back to the podcast for another season to give it another shot?
Like I said, I mean, it's just we need to have that reason because the main, like I said, the main reason we did it was because we can and we could, and then we did, and then no one cared, and so it's like, and I think it's because we have other stuff going on as well. We have families, and we got work to do, and we do, like I said, we do talk about it, but we want to find the right thing to come back and the one that's sustainable as well. Because I think, if you're going to get into podcasting and do that kind of stuff, then you need to do something that is easy to do and is no effort to you and is, it's no effort. And it's just like, you get to do it and then you love doing it. And whether one person listens or whether 20 million people listen, it should be the same. And I think you're, like you said, if you're chasing the money for it or the views or the listens, as it were,
the podcast fame.
The podcast fame. It's just, I mean, you got to remember there's so many people out there doing it, and it's really hard to find an original idea that can be executed with consistency and quality over time. And I'm not saying you can't do it, because I'm sure there are lots of people out there that podcast and they do about 10 episodes and all of a sudden, boom, it happens for them, which again, but that's the same with everything. It's like, when you're in a band and you happen to play a venue where that right record exec is in the place at the right time, nothing's changed. It's all, a lot of it's luck. But if you're looking at like making money out of it, well, it's like everything. You have to put in the work and you have to love what you do. And there has to be a reason and a why. Otherwise, it really is just pointless. You will burn out.
Have you thought whether you go solo or do another season with your partner? What I tell people is like with podcasts, especially with video and podcast interviews, kind of like this one, it kind of, you can create unlimited pieces of content as well. So it almost like showcases your expertise without having to do how-to content. Because I say in a lot of my videos that if I have to do another how-to video, I'm going to like just smack my head up against the wall. But this allows people like us to showcase our expertise without having to do it. Have you thought about it from that perspective and just kind of going with it, showcasing your expertise and just using it as like just multiple pieces of content? Like for this, I mean, it's a 30-40 minute interview, and all you have to do is cut out the clips and then just put on the pieces of value, and now you've got 10 out of this, you know?
Yeah. Personally, I would, I've always had in the deep recesses of my mind as a child, and I've always wanted to do like radio DJing or something like that, which obviously podcasting is, not far off that kind of thing. And I know we've had talks about it, and he wants to do, I can't say too much about it because I don't know if he's going to do it, but he wants to do, he has an idea to do something which is like local to him, and get people in, like local people involved, and keep it like a video podcast. So it's different to what we were doing, but it's a bit more, he's talking to different people. But one thing he always said, which I thought was really interesting, was that, you got to think about doing a podcast is that you can't rely on other people all the time. And what he means by that is you have to be able to sit there and do a 30-minute podcast on your own, talking about whatever it is you're talking about. And I think if you are struggling to do that, then you need to question about what you're doing. Because if you have to bring people in to make your podcast good, then I worry for like that could take even longer. Because and I think that's where the talent lies, to talk to yourself effectively it sounds like a really easy thing to do, but like to talk entertainingly, or, and that gives value or storytelling, whatever it is, for half an hour on your own. I mean, like James Wedmore, like you mentioned, he's really good. I mean, he can literally sit there, and I've, heard some of his, it's like 20 minutes long, 25 minutes long. He's just talking Wedmore, and it's just like, wow, he can just do that. And I think that's a good thing to learn, that if you can talk like that, and then I think you'll do really well. And then you bring other people in to amplify what you're already good at, and use them, in a way to add more value. Personally, for me, I find that I love the sound of my own voice, and I love talking, but I don't know if I have it in me to do half an hour on my own of what I would deem to be interesting content. Other people might find it, but it's just, for me, it's trying to collate all that together and trying to give value. I think like with all things, all creative stuff, you're just like, I want to do this. And then you go, right, what do I do? And you're like, blank page, crickets, So that's where I am. And I'm kind of, I find the video side a bit more interesting. But then for me, doing like the physicality of doing a podcast would be so painfully easy, but it's where I get stuck is the content. What would you do it about? And how could I keep that topic going on for months on end, years,
I do. And dude, this is what I hate about Zoom cutting me off at the damn 40-minute mark. I got so many follow-up questions to answer that, but the big takeaway so far is to basically use what you have. Don't go too crazy with production. That's why even I'm practicing what I preach, doing this all on Zoom. Yeah, we have professional audio, but it's not too crazy. And crap, what were we just saying about? Oh, you said you about being able to do a podcast on your own as well, because my show is heavily interviews just because that's what I love to do, but that's what I need to do as well as more solo episodes. Is there any last piece of advice you would give to somebody starting a podcast? And yeah.
I would just say choose your topic wisely, because yes, you can evolve. Yes, you can change. But you really have to love what you're talking about. And I honestly believe you should be able to talk about what you want to talk about to yourself. And I think once you get past those hurdles, or at least, every other episode or every 3 episodes you do one on your own, I think it's good practice. And I think it's good to be able to do that, and I think it shows real strong communication skills to be able to do that. So I definitely think that is worth pursuing in that way. So choose your topic wisely.
Perfect. And real quick, where can we find you online before it cuts us off?
You can say at Ryan Say on Instagram, Ryan Say on YouTube, and ryansay.com.
All right.
Still do in websites.
Yeah, and I'll put all that info in the link below or the description below if you're on YouTube. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Cool. Cheers. I'll see you soon.